Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Momentum is building for a war between Ukraine and Russia.
Tensions between Russia and the West are growing rapidly.
President Biden considering deploying thousands of troops to Eastern Europe.
There are now 100,000 troops on the eastern border of Ukraine. Russia is setting up field hospitals on this border. Like, this is what preparation for war looks like, a legitimate war.
Ukrainian troops are watching and waiting, saying they are preparing for a fight.
The US has ordered the families of embassy staff to leave Ukraine. Britain has sent all of their non-essential staff home. And now the US is sending tons of weapons and munitions to Ukraine's army. And we're even considering deploying our own troops to the region. I mean, this thing is heating up. Meanwhile, Russia and the West have been in Geneva and Brussels trying to talk it out and sort of getting nowhere.
The message is very clear. Should Russia take further aggressive actions against Ukraine, the costs will be severe and the consequences serious.
It's a scary, grim momentum that is unpredictable, and the chances of miscalculation and escalation are growing. I want to explain what's going on here, but I want to show you that this isn't just typical geopolitical behavior, stuff that can just be explained on the map. Instead, to understand why 100,000 troops are camped out on Ukraine's eastern border, ready for war, you have to understand Russia and how it's been cut down over the ages, from a Slavic empire that dominated this whole region, to then the Soviet Union, which was defeated in the 90s. And what you really have to understand here is how that history is transposed onto the brain of one man, this guy, Vladimir Putin. This is a story about regional domination and struggles between big powers, but really, it's the story about what Vladimir Putin really wants.
Russian troops moving swiftly to take control of military bases in Crimea.
Russia is amassing more than 100,000 troops and a lot of military hardware at the border with Ukraine.
Before we go any further, I want to say thank you to today's sponsor, which is BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform that allows you to access therapy. I'm a major fan of therapy. I've been doing it for over 2 years now, and it has changed my entire world. I really believe that therapy is overstigmatized and not accessible to people, and BetterHelp is trying to change that, which I really believe in and support. With BetterHelp, you can quickly sign up and you take a little quiz, and it connects you to a network of thousands and thousands of professionals who you can start talking with today. There are a variety of experts in different fields of therapy within BetterHelp's network. So you can find somebody who is right for you. And for me, I didn't have any particular specific issue that I was going to therapy for. I just started therapy, and I realized that it was just incredibly helpful to have someone to talk to and to learn how to express my feelings and to learn how to talk about what was happening inside of my brain. BetterHelp is not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is licensed, legitimate, professional therapists who you connect with over the internet securely, which is great because therapy is usually really hard to figure out. Where's the right therapist? How do I get in? How do I book it? All of that is usually very difficult, at least in my experience. And so BetterHelp is making it easier. So if you want to try this out, you can get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp by going to the link in my description. Thank you, BetterHelp, for supporting my channel, for supporting this work. Let's dive back in. Okay, let's get up to speed on what's happening here. And I'm just gonna quickly give you the highlight version of like the news that's happening, because I wanna get into the juicy part, which is like why, the roots of all of this. So let's go. A few months ago, Russia started sending more and more troops to this border. It's this massive border between Ukraine and Russia. They said they were doing a military exercise, but the rest of the world was like, yeah, we totally believe you, Russia. This was right before this big meeting where North American and European countries were coming together to talk about a lot of different things, like these countries often do in these diplomatic summits. But soon, because of Russia's aggressive behavior coming in and setting up 100,000 troops on the border with Ukraine, the entire summit turned into a whole WTF Russia, what are you doing on the border of Ukraine meeting. Before the meeting, Putin comes out and says, listen, I have some demands for the West. And everyone's like, okay, Russia, what are your demands? You know, we have like COVID-19 right now, and like that's like surging. So like, we don't need your like bluster about what your demands are. And Putin's like, no, here's my list of demands. Putin's demands for the summit were this. Number one, that NATO, which is this big military alliance between US, Canada, and Europe, stop expanding, meaning they don't let any new members in, okay? So Russia's like, no more new members to your like cool military club that I don't like. You can't have any more members. Number two, that NATO withdraw all of their troops from anywhere in Eastern Europe. Basically, Putin is saying, I can veto any military cooperation or troops going between countries that have to do with Eastern Europe, the place that used to be the Soviet Union, okay? And number three, Putin demands that America vow not to protect its allies in Eastern Europe with nuclear weapons. LOL, said all of the other countries. You're literally nuts, Vladimir Putin. Like, these are the most ridiculous demands ever. But there he is, Putin, with these demands, these very, very aggressive demands. And he sort of is implying that if his demands aren't met, he's going to invade Ukraine. I mean, it doesn't work like this. This is not how international relations work. You don't just show up and say, like, I'm not going to allow other countries to join your alliance because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But what I love about this list of demands from Vladimir Putin for this summit is that it gives us a clue on what Vladimir Putin really wants, what he's after here. You read them closely and you can grasp his intentions. But to grasp those intentions, you have to understand what NATO is and what Russia and Ukraine used to be. Okay, so a while back I made this video about why Russia is so damn big, where I explain how modern day Russia started here in Kiev, which is actually modern day Ukraine. In other words, modern day Russia, as we know it, has its original roots in Ukraine. These places grew up together, and they eventually became a part of the same mega empire called the Soviet Union. They were deeply intertwined, not just in their history and their culture, but also in their economy and their politics. So it's after World War II, it's like the 50s, 60s, 70s, and NATO was formed, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This was a military alliance between all of these countries that was meant to sort of deter the Soviet Union from expanding and taking over the world. But, as we all know, the Soviet Union, which was Russia and all of these other countries, collapsed in 1991. And all of these Soviet republics, including Ukraine, became independent, meaning they were not now a part of one big block of countries anymore. But just because the borders all split up, it doesn't mean that these cultural ties actually broke. Like, for example, the Soviet leader at the time of the collapse of the Soviet Union, this guy, Gorbachev, he was the son of a Ukrainian mother and a Russian father. Like, he grew up with his mother singing him Ukrainian folk songs. In his mind, Ukraine and Russia were like one thing. So there was major reluctance to accept Ukraine as a separate thing from Russia. In so many ways, they are one. There was another Russian at the time who did not accept this new division. This young intelligence officer, Vladimir Putin, who was starting to rise up in the ranks of post-Soviet Russia. There's this amazing quote from 2005 where Putin is giving the State of the Union address, where Putin declares the collapse of the Soviet Union, quote, the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. And as for the Russian people, it became a genuine tragedy. Tens of millions of fellow citizens and countrymen found themselves beyond the fringes of Russian territory. Do you see how he frames this? The Soviet Union were all one people in his mind. And after it collapsed, all of these people who were a part of the motherland were now outside of the fringes or the boundaries of Russian territory. First off, fact check. Greatest catastrophe of the 20th century? Like, do you remember what else happened in the 20th century, Vladimir? Putin's worry about the collapse of this one people starts to get way worse when the West, his enemy, starts showing up to his neighborhood, to all these ex-Soviet countries that are now independent. The West starts selling their ideology of democracy and capitalism and inviting them to join their military alliance called NATO. And guess what? These countries are totally buying it. All these ex-Soviet countries are now joining NATO, and some of them the EU, and Putin is hating this. He's like, not only did the Soviet Union divide and all of these people are now outside of the Russia motherland, but now they're being persuaded by the West to join their military alliance. This is terrible news. Over the years, this continues to happen while Putin himself starts to chip away at Russian institutions, making them weaker and weaker. He's silencing his rivals and he's consolidating power in himself. And in the past few years, he's effectively silenced anyone who can challenge him. Any institution, any court, or any political rival have all been silenced. It's been decades since the Soviet Union fell, but as Putin gains more power, he still sees the region through the lens of the old Cold War, Soviet, Slavic Empire view. He sees this region as one big block that has been torn apart by outside forces. The greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. And the worst situation of all of these, according to Putin, is Ukraine, which was like the gem of the Soviet Union. There was tons of cultural heritage. Again, Russia sort of started in Ukraine. Not to mention, it was a very populous and industrious, resource-rich place. And over the years, Ukraine has been drifting west. It hasn't joined NATO yet, but more and more it's been electing pro-Western presidents. It's been flirting with membership in NATO. It's becoming less and less attached to the Russian heritage that Putin so adores. And more than half of Ukrainians say that they'd be down to join the EU. 64% of them say that they would be cool joining NATO. But Putin can't handle this. He is in total denial. Like an ex-boyfriend who can't handle his ex-girlfriend starting to date someone else, Putin can't let Ukraine go. He won't let go. So for the past decade, he's been trying to keep the West out and bring Ukraine back into the motherland of Russia. This usually takes the form of Putin sending secret soldiers from Russia into Ukraine to help the people in Ukraine who want to separate from Ukraine and join Russia. It also takes the form of, stealing entire parts of Ukraine for Russia.
Russian troops moving swiftly to take control of military bases in Crimea.
Like in 2014, Putin just did this.
To what America is officially calling a Russian invasion of Ukraine.
He went down and just snatched this bit of Ukraine and folded it into Russia. So you're starting to see what's going on here. Putin's life's work is to salvage what he calls the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century, the division and the separation of the Soviet republics from Russia. So let's get to present day. It's 2022. Putin is at it again. And honestly, if you really want to understand the mind of Vladimir Putin and his whole view on this, you have to read this. On the History of Unity of Russians and Ukrainians by Vladimir Putin, a blog post that kind of sounds like a 9th grade history essay. In this essay, Vladimir Putin argues that Russia and Ukraine are one people. He calls them essentially the same historical and spiritual space. Kind of beautiful writing, honestly. Anyway, he argues that the division between the two countries is due to, quote, a deliberate effort by those forces that have always sought to undermine our unity. And that the formula they use, these outside forces, is a classic one: divide and rule. And then he launches into this super in-depth, 10-page argument as to every single historical beat of Ukraine and Russia's history to make this argument that this is one people and the division is totally because of outside powers, i.e. the West. Okay, but listen, there's this moment at the end of the post that actually kind of hit me in a big way. He says this: just have a look at Austria and Germany, or the US and Canada, how they live next to each other. Close in ethnic composition, culture, and in fact sharing one language, they remain sovereign states with their own interests, with their own foreign policy, but this does not prevent them from the closest integration or allied relations. They have very conditional, transparent borders, and when crossing them, citizens feel at home. They create families, study, work, do business, Incidentally, so do millions of those born in Ukraine who now live in Russia. We see them as our own close people. I mean, listen, like, I'm not in support of what Putin is doing, but like that's like a pretty solid like analogy. If China suddenly showed up and started like coaxing Canada into being a part of its alliance, I would be a little bit like, what's going on here? That's what Putin feels. And so I kind of get what he means there. There's a deep heritage and connection between these people, and he's seen that falter and dissolve, and he doesn't like it. He clearly genuinely feels a brotherhood and this deep heritage connection with the people of Ukraine. Okay, Putin, I get it. Your essay is compelling there at the end. You're clearly very smart and well-read. But this does not justify what you've been up to, okay? It doesn't justify sending 100,000 troops to the border, or sending cyber soldiers to sabotage the Ukrainian government, or annexing territory, fueling a conflict that has killed tens of thousands of people in eastern Ukraine. No. Okay? No matter how much affection you feel for Ukrainian heritage and its connection to Russia, this is not okay. Again, it's like the boyfriend who genuinely loves his girlfriend. They had a great relationship, but they broke up. And she's free to see whomever she wants. But Putin is not ready to let go.
What the hell's wrong with you? I love you, Jessica. What the hell is wrong with you, dude? Don't fucking touch me. I love you, dude. World star!
Putin has constructed his own reality here, one in which Ukraine is actually being controlled by shadowy Western forces who are holding the people of Ukraine hostage. And if that he invades, it'll be a swift victory because Ukrainians will accept him with open arms, the great liberator. Like, this guy's a total romantic. He's a history buff and a romantic, and he has a hill to die on here. And it is liberating the people who've been taken from the Russian motherland. Kind of like the abusive boyfriend who's like, she actually really loves me, but it's her annoying friends who are planting all these ideas in her head. That's why she broke up with me. And it's like, no, dude, she's over you.
What the hell's wrong with you? I love you, Jessica.
I mean, maybe this video should be called Putin is just like your abusive ex-boyfriend.
What the hell's wrong with you? I love you, Jessica. What's wrong with you?
Okay, so where does this leave us? It's 2022. Putin is showing up to these meetings in Europe to tell them where he stands. He says, NATO, you cannot expand anymore. No new members, and you need to withdraw all your troops from Eastern Europe, my neighborhood. He knows these demands will never be accepted because they're ludicrous, but what he's doing is showing a false effort to say, well, we tried to negotiate with the West, but they didn't want to, hence giving a little bit more justification to a Russian invasion. So, will Russia invade? Is there war coming? Maybe. It's impossible to know because it's all inside of the head of this guy. But if I were to make the best argument that war is not coming tomorrow, I would look at a few things. Number one, war in Ukraine would be incredibly costly for Vladimir Putin. Russia has a far superior army to Ukraine's, but still Ukraine has a very good army that is supported by the West and would give Putin a pretty bad bloody nose in any invasion. Controlling territory in Ukraine would be very hard. Ukraine is a giant country. They would fight back, and it would be very hard to actually conquer and take over territory. Another major point here is that if Russia invades Ukraine, this gives NATO new purpose. If you remember, NATO was created because of the Cold War, because the Soviet Union was big and nuclear powered. Once the Soviet Union fell, NATO sort of has been looking for a new purpose over the past couple decades. If Russia invades Ukraine, NATO suddenly has a brand new purpose to unite and to invest in becoming more powerful than ever. Putin knows that, and it would be very bad news for him if that happened. But most importantly, perhaps the easiest clue for me to believe that war isn't coming tomorrow is the Russian propaganda machine is not preparing the Russian people for an invasion. In 2014, when Russia was about to invade and take over Crimea, this part of Ukraine, there was a barrage of state propaganda that prepared the Russian people that this was a justified attack. So when it happened, it wasn't a surprise and it felt very normal. That isn't happening right now in Russia, at least for now. It may start happening tomorrow, but for now, I think Putin is showing up to the border, flexing his muscles, and showing the West that he is earnest. I'm not sure that he's going to invade tomorrow, but he very well could. I mean, read the guy's blog post and you'll realize that he is a romantic about this. He is incredibly idealistic about the glory days of the Slavic empires, and he wants to get it back. So there is dangerous momentum towards war. And the way war works is even a small little fight can turn into the other guy doing something bigger and crazier, and then the other person has to respond with something a little bit bigger. That's called escalation. And there's not really a ceiling to how much that momentum can spin out of control. That is why it's so scary when two nuclear countries go to war with each other, because there's kind of no ceiling. So yeah, it's dangerous. This is scary. I'm not sure what happens next here, but the best we can do is keep an eye on this. At least for now, we better understand what Putin really wants out of all of this. Thanks for watching. I appreciate everyone for being here. I'm excited for another year of a lot of bigger, more ambitious videos on this channel. I've been diving really deep. I've been printing a lot of things out and reading them in hard copy, which I really like, and highlighting them for these videos, which is really helpful for me and hopefully helpful for you. If you want to support this work, I have a Patreon, which you can go check out. There's a link in my description. And then I also am selling presets and LUTs for video and photo. It's what I use to color. This screen right now is being colored by a LUT, which is a color profile that you can put on your video to make it look pretty. This is what it looks like without the LUT. Hi. And this is what it looks like with the LUT. It's a lot better, and I have quite a few of them that we've been working on for probably over a year and a half with a professional colorist. It's now out and for sale. I also have them for photos as well. Thank you all for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.